That was 4:45, 5 o'clock. So they're not written with any specific order or seder. And I felt that afterward, that what was the hashgacha to write, the siyata d'shmaya, how they came out was how I would leave it. Again, that as a shmuz and as a seder hadvarim, it's not mesudar, but it was mesudar k'fi how it came out of my life last night. Sometimes that has tayalas. Another nikud is that there won't be chedushim today. It's never chedushim, but there certainly won't be chedushim today. But it's like this. I remember when I was a bacher, and even after when I was in Geman, so a lot of times there would be gedolim that would speak by either by the Mir Yeshiva or anywhere. I remember when Rav Leib came to Mir, and I remember waiting to hear what's Rav Leib going to say in the Mir Yeshiva, and it was like Rosh Hashanah, I think it was. And I remember coming out of it, mispoil, mamash mispoil. When I would think about it afterward, he really didn't say much. He didn't say mamash much. What was he say? He would say to be mechazik in Torah, to be mechazik in tefillah, all the things that we talk about in our yeshivas, and that's all he would say. So vice versa, when it comes from a gadol, a person with a zeifel leid and a zeifel life experience, so then it has a different taikif. And Mamela, he could be saying the most simple things and the things that everybody knows. But when a gadol says it, so then it comes out of his leiv and it has more of a koyach. That's kanira, even though there weren't any chedushim. So what you're hearing from me, it doesn't have chedushim. And obviously, it's not coming from a gadol, but it's coming from a Rebbe that lost a Talmud. So it has a certain taikif, it has a certain hergish that even if there aren't chedushim, but afal pikein, it has something that has a certain koyach, a certain hashgacha pratis. The Kosh Baruch Hu was tevei in us that if the leiv is open, especially the leiv of the Rebbe and the leiv of the Talmud and the Talmidim, so then it's going to have more of a taikif. It'll go in, so there won't be chedushim, but al kapanim it'll have a taikif. I never fully understood the Derech Agav. I'm not sure if I should start like this, and I will anyways. Today I'm coming to be mechazik ourselves. We're holding in the Shloshim Meibechi, and there's different kufis, there's different shlavim in this tragedy, but we are holding in the Shloshim Meibechi. But in the Kailo, we have to be able to learn. We have to be able to go weiter and to be mechazik ourselves and to make this korban l'shma, like I spoke about last night. So it's important to realize going in, the tachlis today is not to increase sadness. I don't think we need chizik in that. The tachlis of the hesped is yes, that's the tachlis, is to increase bechi and to increase the sorrow and the sadness. I don't think at this point we need that. We had enough of that for the last 3 days. We know the sadness and the tsar we all feel. Now we need a little chizik, and there's different shlavim of the chizik. Now we need one type of chizik. I never understood until I would say the last 3 days. Maybe the culmination was last night, maybe it was Friday. Whoever remembers what Friday was, a very difficult day for all those that were involved. And I never understood the oimek and the depth of the relationship between the Talmud and the Rebbe. I never understood it. It was something that I took for granted. I definitely would put Moshe as the closest Talmidim, the closest Talmidim. But I still never understood the depth of the relationship. I never understood it. And obviously, when something is taken away from you, so then you understand it more. And now I understand it, understand what it is to have a kesher of that nature. Until now, it was one level. Now I understand it on a totally different level. I never understood what it is to have Yeshua ben Nun. Ilan was telling me last night. I knew it, but I never thought about it before. And you were telling me, Rabbi Spitzer was telling me how he would always wait till the shiur was up, and if the shiur wasn't up, he would call you and he would say to you, "Where's the shiur?" Or he would tell you that there's a problem. He was the first one to tell you there's a problem with the shiur. He was the Yeshua ben Nun. He was Yeshua ben Nun, and he was always waiting for the shiur. He's Davik Berabayisav. But you were telling me, Chaim, how after he walked out, like I said at the Hesped, after on Thursday, and he had a shaila and a stira from something I said this year to something I said last year already. I answered him when we walked out. I told him it's not clear. It's not so clear, but this is, I think, what it is. And like I said last night, he said, it's a trademark. And Chaim told me he spent the rest of the Seder working on it. He didn't suffice with it. He worked on it, the whole Seder, to get the exact nusach. I never understood the oimek of a relationship between a Rebbe and a Talmud until these last few days. And for that, I'm a vakish mechila from all the Talmidim, because it's a whole different gedank now, totally different. I never didn't know until yesterday what I was made of, as they say, and now it's a whole different level. And I ask you mechila. It takes another oimed al das rabbi at Arbaim Shana. It says, right, the person doesn't oimed al das rabbi until 40 years. So vice versa, it takes a few years even for the Rebbe to be oimed al das talmidai, to understand what it is, the amkus, the relationship between the Rebbe and the Talmud. The if I'm saying this to you, then you have to also hear yourselves what's the oimek of a relationship between a Talmud and a Rebbe, how to increase that relationship. I never understood it. I could be myrich on this, for the whole hour that we'll talk, but I won't. But it's something that I came to a different level of Havana on Friday, on Shabbos, last night, and it's something that is it's very miyuched. It's very, very miyuched. They say that it's the greatest single tragedy in modern day Israel. What occurred on Friday, this terrible tragedy, meaning something that was of that magnitude, which wasn't, I guess, from a war, etc. That's what they're saying. But we mustn't lose sight what the Chazon Ish said. They once came to the Chazon Ish and they told the Chazon Ish that there was a plane. It was the first plane crash of civilians of its time. I think 57 people were in a plane that crashed. I don't think it was Jews. It was 57 people that were in a plane crash and they came to tell the Chazon Ish about it, that there was a terrible crash and 57 people died. So the Chazon Ish said that you're making a mistake. At the main, you think that there was, 57 people that the mikra, they all happened to be there, and the plane crashed, and the plane all went down, and they crashed. So the male, all 57 people died. It's not like that. Nothing could be further from the truth. Because Baruch Hu had exiled in on these 57 people, and Mamela, he had to implement his gzar din. As a mele, he put them all in the plane, and therefore the plane crashed. But the gzar was on all 57, and they had to. So over here, the gzar din was on all 45, I think they're saying, and the gzar was on all 45. So the mele, HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to bring them all to Meron. He brought all the 45 korbanos to Meron in order to bring that grace of korban. But it wasn't the pshat like the mikra. This one happened to be there, and this one happened to be in that corner. Why were they in that specific place? And it's all the mikra, that place. If it did cave in, it didn't. Wherever it happened, it's no shaykhs. There were 45 korbanos that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought to that place because he wanted to be makriv 45 korbanos in the Heilige Platz, in the Heilige Malkim of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Heilige Platz. And the Maisa, there's no question. To talk about is Meron a dangerous place? Is it dangerous in the matziv that they describe every year? Maybe it is. What to think about next year is maybe Taka. Maybe it's a dangerous place. To shtel on such is not an point. It's a vadana. It's something that one has to know and has to don in a different skufa. Maybe not now, not when it's the wounds are raw. That's the dan. Maybe it's shliach hazeka. Maybe it's dangerous. Maybe it's koch nefesh. But it's bechlal no shaykhs to the korbanos that were nifter, the korbanos that were mukrav on the mizbeach of Rabbi Shimon. It's no connection in the Holocaust. The Holocaust. What was the goyim of the Holocaust? It was this week's parsha, the Toichacha, the Chukoisai, when the Chilul Shabbos level went up to 50% in Slobodka, when the matziv in the world, etc., was of such a nature that the Toichacha is said to people, but for when the klal at large are not doing Ratzon Hashem, and they're going against the Ratzon Hashem. So that's when you have the Teichacha. The description of the Teichacha was never played better than what you saw in the Holocaust. Vafal Pikein, that does not mean that the Korbanis and the Tzadikim and Rav Chanan and my Babas and Zaydis and your Babas and Zaydis that were Mukrav or the Korbanis in Auschwitz, that's not to say that they weren't Tzadikim. That's not to say that they weren't in a Skadashti B'Tayich B'nai Yisrael. The person in life has to be able to dance separately the cause, the effect. He has to be able to dance separately the circumstances and the message. What we have to dance today about is the message, and not to be dining on the circumstances. Not to be dining is maybe on a dangerous place and things like that. That's not oila la das that anybody would be talking about now. It's something that for sure in the future has to be dealt with. But what we have to do is we have to take the message, like I said last night. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu is makar of the korban, the lishma of the korban is our kavanas. The shema of the korban of the Heilige Bashefer is not his kavanah, it's our kavanah. If we'll be mechazik ourselves, So then the korban is l'shma. If we're not mechazik ourselves in chalila, the korban is shalei l'shma. That's a yid is a soldier, Rabbi say. A yid's a soldier. You tell a yid, kumt Rosh Hashanah serious. You tell the same yid the next 10 days is extremely serious. Yom Kippur the most serious, and then Motzei Yom Kippur tanzt and simcha and freilich as I feel like nothing happened. A few days later, he's already in the sukkah. Don't you remember a few minutes ago you were davening for your life at Ne'ilah? A few moments later, he's at Simchas Torah, the highlight of the year. Comes a little bit später in the cycle of things. He gets to Chanukah. Chanukah is the awesome time of his Kallus of Simcha and of Torah and of everything. A minute later, we're holding by Sarah B'Tevis. We tell you have to be sad now. A Yid is a soldier. A Yid is a soldier. We tell him on Purim, on Freilich. We tell a Yid Pesach. He has to be Malchustik. Shiur Soimer, we go back to Avelis. Shiur Soimer, back to Avelis. These are you made din when they're not. The opportunity is not taken advantage of. The days of leading up to Matan Torah, there were always days of din. It's not a new thing. There were days of din in the Crusades. There were days of din in the time of the Holocaust. Many of our brothers and sisters were murdered by the Rishayim Yimach Shemam in this time period, in this group, in the next couple of weeks. There were always days of din. A few more moments from now is going to be the Dry Vachim. We hope we don't get there. And that's also the Yid is going to be told that he has to be extremely sad. He has to have pain. Until it culminates in the Eiffel Mamish and the Yom HaTishah. What's a minute later? Is the Ben Esmanim. Ben Esmanim is a time of simcha. It's a time to relax and to get fresh koiches. It's not the stira. A Yid is a soldier. A Yid is a soldier. We tell you now you have to be happy, so now you're happy. We tell you now you have to be sad, so now you're sad. Came Shabbos, Erev Shabbos, I found out the news at 7:01. Mincha was at 7:04. And Shiur, I think, was 7:23. 7:01, I found out that he was nifter. The words Baruch Dayan Em is still ringing in my ear. I haven't slept, I think, in the last 60 hours. It's not because I'm not tired. It's because I can't bring myself to go to sleep because I'm afraid I'm going to hear those words. And it's 7:23. He's a soldier. Shabbos. What would Moshe say? What kind of simcha would Moshe have on his face when came Shabbos? How much ahava he had for the Havas of Torah, for the ahava of the limud of Shabbos, of what we do here in the Kallus. Right? He's a soldier. Shabbos, no crying. Motzei Menucha, simcha. Motzei Menucha, sorrow, sadness. Motzei Menucha, sadness. Weiter in the Kallus, simcha. Have to learn Torah with simcha. What's the prerequisite of the kinyan of Torah? Simcha. Torah has to be learned with simcha. He is a soldier. He is a soldier. It's not a kasha. A guy can't understand this. A guy has to wallow in pain. If there's pain, he has to know. And he has to say, now it's serious time. And don't talk to me about that. And, all those uncomfortable statements and makes the person that's near him feel uncomfortable. He's a soldier. If you last night, have to be with sorrow. You have to be in terrible sadness and terrible pain. Is it a day later? Is it shloishi meibechi? There has to be a point where we're going to be able to, we have to be mechazik ourselves. He is a soldier. Rabbi Kiva lost 24,000 talmidim. 24,000 talmidim. I now understand. I'm not sure if anybody says this, but I understand now this is the greatest nace in the history of Klal Yisrael. The greatest nace in the history of Klal, that Rabbi Kiva was able to go on after losing 24,000 talmidim. I lost one and I still don't know, but 24,000 Moshe Bergmans. It's something which is, it's minanimna. It's something that is, it's a klepzuchnish. It's not something which is nitfas. And Rabbi Kiva went weiter because he is a soldier. He's a soldier. The reason we're here today is because of people like Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva went weiter. Rabbi Kiva was our Rebbe and had to go weiter. Matzavim of tragedy. And who was he going weiter from? From the matzav of when a Talmud Chacham was taken, echod mipnei achabura. He is a soldier. But Rabbi Kiva has no questions. There are no questions. Rabbi Kiva never had any questions. There were never questions. When they scraped Rabbi Kiva's skin and they were taking Rabbi Kiva to his death, and Rabbi Kiva was saying, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. When he said Echad, the Talmidim asked the question, not Kan Rebbe. Until this point, Achad. And they said, Kol Yomai, it's the Arti. And the Malachi Asharis, they shook the whole entire world. And they came to the Rebbeinu Shalom and said, Zutoira v'Zuschara. This is the schar of Torah. Hey, look at Tana Rebbe Kiva. The Rebbe Kiva that shook the whole entire world when he went weiter and was maimed Torah in Klal Yisrael, even when the situation was of such sorrow and such pain. And the Talmidim were all nifter. And Rabbi Kiva, who understood the depth of a Talmud, I'm like myself, he understood what it is, a Rebbe-Talmud relationship, and what it is for Klal Yisrael, the Messiah, and Big Mamshech the Messiah. And Rabbi Kiva went weiter. Zu Torah v'Zu and the Malachi Ashar shook the whole entire world. Zu Torah, this is the Torah, and this is the schar of Torah as they scrape the skin of Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva has no questions. No questions. Rabbi Kiva doesn't have a question. HaKadosh Baruch Hu answered the Malachi Asharis. And he said to him, if you say another word, I'll turn the world back into Toyu Bavayim. And the shaila is obvious. The shaila is, that's an answer. Child asks a good kasha. Yes, I tell you, shaila, the Shabbos day, that's a good question. You don't know the answer. You say another word, you get a smack. That's the answer. That's the answer. What's the answer? They're asking a good kasha. Is it Torah? Is it Schara? Well, ask the kasha like this. If Rabbi Kiva lost 20 Talmidim and he was able to go weiter, you should have to give him mamish an endless nitzkias, an endless Gan Eden. And this is what a person gets, a Gehenna in this world. What's the answer? 24,000 Talmidim, the Katana, the Rabbi Kiva, the Amal of the door, the Moshe Rabbeinu of the door. So what's the answer? You say another word, I turn the whole world back into Toyu Vavayim. Many of us have the kasha, the Echad Me'abnei Echad, but the Smetna. Yiddish, you say the Smetna, he's the cream of the crop, he's the cream of our koilo, the Sefer Ponim Yafis and the Havas HaTorah, Yalas Chain, in every which way, the Ben Adol Chavera, the Tefillah, the Baruch Hu Baruch Shemoi. That's the Rebbeinu Shalom takes. It's a Torah of his Schara. It's a Torah of his Schara. So what's the answer? Because Baruch says, he say another word, and I'll send the world back to Toyu Vavayim. So what's the answer? What's the answer? Rabbi Kiva has no kashas. So Rabbi Shlomo Kluger, Rabbi brought, Rabbi Shlomo Kluger answers like this. He said there was once a king who needed a new coat, some new type of a coat or something. And Moshe liked this word. I said this word one or two times. He liked this word a lot. And he needed a new coat or something, wanted a fancy coat. So he hired somebody to make this beautiful coat. And he gave him all types of threads, silver threads and gold threads and the gold buttons and everything, etc. And he went and he made this most unbelievable coat. When the king got the coat, he was extremely misragish, such a beautiful coat. And he went and he put it on and he showed it off. And the other sarim were jealous that this is, the sar that gives him all the nachas ruach. And they were all jealous of this one sar that was able to give such nachas ruach. So they said that he was embezzling. He said that he embezzled and that really excuse me, is that he embezzled and he was taking some of the threads for himself. So it's very nice that he made you a beautiful coat, but you should know how much he pocketed in that coat. You should only know. So the king heard and was makapel the lashon hara, and he told the person, he made an audit. I want, you have to show me the books. Where the books? I didn't keep books on this. Look, everything is used. Well, they're saying that you stole it, and you have to prove yourself. So he said, well, there's nothing I could do. So he said, well, you have to prove yourself. So he took the coat and he starts one by one to take out threads. He says, what are you doing? You're ruining this beautiful coat. He says, listen, I didn't keep books. I don't have the cheshbonos to show you. The only way that I can show you that I used all of the threads is if I take them out one by one and show you what they are and show you that they're all here. Zot Helik Bashefer says, Rabbi Shlomo Kluger, Zot Helik Bashefer. You're looking at a picture with the mugbal eyes. You're in the picture right over here. You're seeing when Moshe was nifter, Al Kiddush Hashem, is nifter as the korban of the cloud. That's what you're seeing. You're seeing over here with your mugbal eyes. You're seeing something very small. But there's a greater picture over here. You have kashas. Why it had to happen to this person and why it had to happen in this way, etc. These are good kashas. Or maybe they're not good kashas. It's Torah, Zuskara. But if you want, I'll turn the whole world back to Toyu Vavayu, and I'll show you how this fits into this, which led to this, which led to this, which led to this, which led to this. But that's the only way that I can prove it. If I turn the whole world back to Torah Vavai, so that is the answer. The answer is that you're seeing it with mugbal eyes. You're seeing it in a very small place, and there's a bigger picture. We come into the world in the middle of a 6,000-year world. You think you understand the answers? Like the Gemara Ksubis, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi say, he has some type of a koyach to choose. Or the Gemara Ksubis that I said last night. Unrelated thoughts. Pardon me. The Gemara Ksubis Adaf Ayin Zayin. So Gemara says a story, like I said last night. What came out clear and what came throughout the Bechi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi went to Shemayim, he went in his guf. That's what it says in Chazal. He made a trick on the Malach HaMavis to get in there. Malach HaMavis told him, I'll show you where you're going. And he jumped into Shemayim and he made a shul, he's not coming out. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi came there and Shimon Bar Yochai said to him, you're the one that they call Hanu, Makan, Bar Levai. Bar Levai means the one that they're Malava. The one that they're Malava, Kivyachal, that who brings to the Levaya, Kivyachal, who brings you up into Shemayim. You're the one. And then he asked him a question. He said to him, you're not Bar Levai. State in Gemara. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is of the big members in the Palmal Yeshamala. And he's the one that has a tremendous koyach to choose. He's the one that has a tremendous koyach in deciding who comes in there, who comes in with this koyach atfila, who comes in as a korban, as an Isha Yisrael, like the Mechal, like the Gemara says, like Taisa says in Menachos and Daf Kuf Yud, that Mechal Malach Hashem is makriv the korbanish of the nishma tzaddikim every single day. The Isha Yisrael usfilasam. Imagine how they took Moshe to a koyach atfila. And that was what happened over here. It's no kasha. We have to be machazik ourselves. It's no kasha why he was chosen. I could talk about his tremendous ahava for mitzvahs and zrizis on mitzvahs. His wife told me last night something so beautiful, which is the yisoid and the foundation of this koilo. It's the yisoid and the foundation of this koilo. If I had to touch up what is the uptype, what's the description of Yingaman in the koilo, it would be this story about Moshe. We come home, we would talk in the koilo about something, whether it would be this koil or the other koil, it would be schnitzel. We're having schnitzel tonight because we have to live the schnitzel. When we talked about coffee in the koil. Moshe didn't drink coffee. I think that's what she told me last night as well. He wouldn't drink coffee. They didn't drink coffee. So, but they had to have coffee, and every night he told her to heat up the water because maybe today's the day he's going to drink coffee because we're talking about coffee in the koil. A love for mitzvahs. That's what goes on in this market. That's what goes on in this market. He was the exemplary dogma of that. Is the hava of the mitzvahs and the hava, the ben adam l'chaveira. So his wife told me last night that he had a certain problem, and he didn't want me to know that he had this problem, but they had to ask me a certain problem. So she asked me, and he wouldn't ask me because he didn't want to be going to be the agmas nefesh. I didn't know who it was. She called, and I didn't know who it was. But imagine maybe it's my fault. Maybe I should have felt more what the Talmud to a Rebbe. But he didn't want to cause his Rebbe agmas nefesh. Nothing to cause his Rebbe agmas nefesh was mufka. Midaite Torah chigrisak. In your day in Siman Shinayin Vav, so it says in the halacha that al toimar, one shouldn't say malach alasis. What could we do? As if to say, like if there's something that we could do, we would do it. And this is the gzeira from the Halachos of Bishul. Kivyachal halavai, we could change it. He made a mistake. Al toimar. Not supposed to say that. What could we do? Halavai would have made a mistake. Halavai, we could change this. But we could say ma'aser. What could we do in the future? Now we could say ma'aser. So there's al toimar ma'ayalasais. What could we have done? Because there's nothing you could have done, because that was the gzeira of the Halachos of Bishul, the Chofetz Chaim, when he was 8 years old, the Rabbi in the Yeshiva in Cheder. He asked the kids, what would you do if you were Halachos of Bishul, if you were God? What would you do? So this child said, that person that his barn just burned down, I would make it not burn. And that person that the wife became Nebuch, I would make her that she wouldn't be. And one by one, all the different saras, each one of the children went one by one and said, I wouldn't do this problem. Then the Rebbe came to the Chofetz Chaim, Yisrael Meir, age 7, 8, said to him, and what would you do if you're the Eibishter? So he said, okay, you remember what that boy over there said about the barn? So I would burn down the barn. And what that boy said over there about the person that Nebuch is crank, so I would make him crank. And the Rebbe thought that there was something more wrong with this boy. The Halachos of Chofetz Chaim, even at the age of 7, understood if the Halachos of Bishul, the Avinu Av HaRachamon, if he understands that that's what's the best, then that's what's the best. The Avinu Av HaRachamon, the Kosh Baruch Hu loves us and has more rachamim than we do. The Avinu Av HaRachamon. And this is where we have to be mechazik ourselves. We have to be mechazik ourselves. In general, in the Welt today, it became very normal for a person to blame other people, other things, other situations, and not to take achrayus and to be mechazik himself. Not to bring the korban lashma. What does the Gemara in Gittin say? The Gemara says that Reb Yeshua ben Hananya, when he went to Rome, the Gemara says in Zayin, in class, the Gemara says when he went to Rome, so he saw a little child there, and he asked the child who was a slave, a Yiddish slave, what are you doing over here? So he told him, we did Averas, we belong over here. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Hananya said, it's Maftachani, I know that this child one day will be the leaders of one of the leaders of Klal Yisrael, be a Moirei or Rabbi Yisrael. What did he say? And Kacha Basayf Have. He turned into Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha, and he was one of the great Gedolim of Klal Yisrael. So the Briskerov asked the Kasha, what did he hear from the child? The child was asked, why are you a slave? And he said, we were Chatanu, Avasei, Chatanu, we did Averis. What did he hear? He heard that the child takes achrayus. He heard that the child takes responsibility, doesn't put the blame on somebody else. He has moidala emes. Such a person will be a moirei Rabbi Yisrael. It's moidala emes. He takes responsibility. He sees the situation. He hears the situation. He's part of the situation. He mechazik himself. He changes because of that situation. And not just let it. Where do we have to mechazik ourselves in emunah? What does Rav Shach write in the Avi Ezri, in Hey, and I think I'm there in the beginning. And he says that what he asked the Brisker Rav, and the Brisker Rav asked this question to Reb Chaim. He brings at the bottom the Beis Halevi at the Kasha. What's the taich of the mitzvah emunah? What's emunah? Effective Brisker Rav, effective Shach. What's emunah? Emunah. You need emunah to believe that the Eibishter runs the world and created the world. You have to have a little bit of seichel, not even a lot, right? Take a glass and drop it on the floor. It doesn't break into perfect pieces. You take every baby that comes out, every person, you don't have to go all the way to a baby. Every situation in the world is the Halachos of Bishul. It screams the Bishul. So what's emunah? It's like the Brisker Rav, it's like the Shach. He says emunah is the lashon emunah. Starts after that. Starts at the things that we don't understand. This is where you have to have emunah. If you see that the Halachos of Bishul is the one that runs such a beautiful world and created such a beautiful world and is the mastermind behind everything. So then there's things that we're not going to understand. And those things that we're not going to understand, that's when you have to have emunah. That's when a person has to be mechazik himself in the Hashem Echad. What's Hashem Echad? Hashem Echad is that there's not two gods. There's not a good God and a bad God. There's all one God. Right? There's no two gods out there. There's only one Rebbeinu Shalom. And the Halachos of Bishul is kulay toiv. Just sometimes you understand the toiv and sometimes you don't. Halavai, you'll be zoichet to understand it. But Hashem Echad. And that's what it is. There's a lot of rachamim in the world. There's a lot of rachamim. How much pain does everybody in this room have, or last night had, on Friday had? A lot of rachamim, a lot of pain, a lot of tsar. And everybody here would want to make it better because we have so much rachamim. There's a lot of midas hadin that you saw, but there's so much more rachamim. There's so much more rachamim because whatever hergeshim of tsar you have, the Halachos of Bishul, he's the Avinu Avraham. He has much more ahava for Klal Yisrael. He has more pain. That means there's a tremendous amount of rachamim in the world right now. As much as you love the loved one and the loss and etc., and as much pain as you have, so the Rebbeinu Shalom, that means there's a tremendous amount of rachamim. Right now is a time, it's a tremendous eitz ratzin in the world. 44, 45 korbanos, so much dam, and so much korban, and so much reach nichayach. That means that there's a tremendous amount of rachamim, a tremendous opportunity right now. Tremendous opportunity. What did Rabbi Yaakov Hillel tell us last night, Shlomi? He told us that the corona was a machala, was a disease, kedugmas askara. Askara was a disease that the person couldn't breathe. And that's what you saw in corona the whole time. The people that the misa of askara was the misa of the Talmidim Rebbe Kiva, and that misa was the misa of all those 24,000 Talmidim, and the misa of corona was very dominant to that. Misa is where a person can't breathe. It's in such a nature, and Vaistal used to have to be misakin that which is Goyim the Mises, Talmidei Rebbe Kiva, Kati Madregasa, but Chazal Megalatas, then Leinagu Kovet Zelazah, the Ben Adam Chaverai. And Memela, if you see that message was feistais, was not taken, Khalil, or needs more of a chizik. So then, even though there was a Paskul Lamas on Lag BaOmer, what was the kasha I asked last night? Where was the Paskul Lamas? Rebbe Kiva had a day off. We didn't get a day off. Where was the Paskul Lamas? So Yaakov Hillel, he answered, there was no Paskul Lamas, because they didn't get the message. So what was the message? More suffocating and more tzara of that nature of askara. And who does HaKadosh Baruch Hu take? He took the shpitz dugma of Ben Adam L'Chaveira. The dugma of Ben Adam L'Chaveira. The dugma of Ben Adam L'Chaveira. Because the korban the korban for the chait of Ben Adam L'Chaveira has to be the dugma hachiboleit of Ben Adam L'Chaveira. The shpitz of Ben Adam L'Chaveira. The sefer panim yafis with their gevein. That's what have to be mechazik ourselves in this. The message, the korban of Ben Adam L'Chaveira. Okay, but the Maisa, the Shloish Lebechi. I don't know how much we're holding in the ability to get Musar. Holding in Shloish Lebechi. The Avinu Avarachman, the Divrei Chaim, lost a son. I think he was a 7-year-old. And he lost a son. They made the Levaya for Shachris even. I don't know why. That was the story. They made the Levaya before Shachris. And then the Rechaim, the Tzanzer, he came to daven Shachris. Right before Shachris, he was Oyer himself, and he told the Chassidim that were with him. He said that he was walking this morning, and somebody came over to him, and he gave him a big clap on the back. He said he had to think for a minute. If the person is an enemy then I'm going to be mamish upset. Punch me in the back. What did I do to you? And from behind, but I'm not looking. He said, but if the person is a friend, so then it's a tremendous ahava. He's going to turn around, barrel. He smacked him in the back, barrel. The harder the smack, sometimes the more of the chaversha. He said this morning, he got a tremendous clap. Tremendous clap. It was the biggest clap that he ever got. I think by most of us in this room, by me for sure, it was the biggest clap that I ever got. Said the Divrei Chaim, he saw this moyerdika clap that he got on the back, and he turned around. Who is it? If it's an enemy, he's going to be really angry. And then he turned around and he saw the Avinu Avarachamon. He saw the Eidkev Hashem, the best friend, my Did Nefesh. And then he went in, Hoidu. He started to daven. Because the more that a person realizes that the clap comes from the Bashefer, the more that he creates that kesher back to the one that's giving the clap. So then it's more, it makes him come to a realization. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants a relationship. He wants after as Hashem Alekecha. What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu want? They say a story with the Maggid. The Maggid was a child. Maggid was a child who was playing hide and seek. You know what the Polish version was, but he was playing hide and seek, and he was so rebishim, and he found such a good hiding spot, and nobody found him. Nobody found him, so he was there for a long time. And then afterward, he went to Zayda, the Baal Shem, and he was crying. He said that I was playing hide and seek, and nobody found me, and everybody stopped playing. They just ran away, and I'm sitting by myself. So the Baal Shem cried when he heard the story. The Baal Shem said that when it says in the Torah, Anoichi Aster Panai, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said that I'll hide myself. So then you're not supposed to just give up looking. Then now's when you're supposed to look harder and harder. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kivyachol, they gave up looking. So then HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to bring a grace of korban. It used to be Marcheshes, when at the Levaya of Reb Chaim Oizer, Marcheshes cried for 10 minutes. And the whole tzibur was misoyer. There were a lot of tikkunim that were done. And who knows how many people were saved from Hitler Yimach because of this oirus at the Levaya, that the Marcheshes. It was a Levaya of one person, or Chaim Oizer, who was shakol keneged kulam. But that was in the olden days when HaKadosh Baruch Hu could take one thing which can affect the whole Klal Yisrael. But today, like Rabbi Yaakov Hillel said last night, that the only way to be misoyer is if we get somebody from every single faction of Yiddishkeit. Somebody that was either an Ashkenazi, a Sephardi, a Litvish, a Chassid, every single chelik of Klal Yisrael has a representative that they feel connected to. He was the English representative. He was the representative of the Kollel. He was the representative of the Galite of the Bnei Chutzlaretz. He was a representative. The Korban. He was our Korban. And that's the only way to be Ma'oyer today. The only way to be Messiah Klal Yisrael is when you get Zaklap that everyone at once, and the whole world had this iris. And you have to be Messiah. If you won't be Messiah now, Rabbi Isaac, you'll never be Messiah ever. If you're not going to be Messiah after Friday, then you'll never be Messiah. Dalachem, never, ever. If you're not going to make changes in your life now, if you're not going to be mechazik now, nothing will ever be mechazik you. Because if this isn't going to give you chizik, then what will? What will? As Zaklap, there's nobody that wasn't affected. I don't know one person. We maybe were affected stronger personally, more personally, but I don't know one that doesn't know one person. It has some type of a connection. Some of us know more than one. Some of us know three. Some of us know four. Some of us know seven. And that's you have to be mechazik. You have to be mechazik, not to wallow in pain. It's not the Yiddish way. To wallow in pain is not the Jewish way. A Yid is a soldier. Lule soyroscha shashua azavadati ba'odni. Without Torah Kedosha, to tchachka with the Heilige Torah, to freitzach with the Torah, to be geschmack with the Torah, to have simcha with the Torah, then taka azavadati ba'odni. Then what would happen with us? Maybe I'm Jewish, but we have Torah Kedosha. That has to give us chizik. And the Chavetz Chaim says that in the door of the time of Vikas and Mashiach, that's the door that we're in. So then I find that Kadosh Baruch Hu he's trying to, finish up all the cheshbonos. I can explain some things. So if we do need to, we don't need to, but it's a time of opportunity. It's a time of opportunity. This is the time of incredible ahava. It's hard to understand, but there's a tremendous amount of rachamim in the world right now. The amount of pain that you're feeling, Kadosh Baruch Hu feels too. And it generates a tremendous amount of rachamim in the world right now. Tremendous amount of rachamim. But that we have to really find the Rebbeinu Shalom. We have to search for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Mordechai Pergamansky used to say, the child goes in for an operation, Leilenu. It goes in for an operation, and everybody brings him to the hospital. The whole family comes. He gets to the door of the hospital, only comes in the parents. The parents come into the hospital. He gets to the operating theater. and even the parents don't come in. And then the child goes into the operating theater and now sets into the fear, because until now he had his family, he had his parents, and now he's by himself. And the child starts to cry out of fear, being alone. But then there's a curtain on top of the operating theater, and the curtain opens, and then he sees his parents, and there's a ganzen Ruach. What changed? What changed? He came in here, he was without his parents. His parents are still not in the operating room, but he knows that Imai Anoichi Bitsara, Ima Kipshuta, Imai Anoichi Bitsara. He knows that she's there. He knows his parents are there, that they're watching him, that he's no longer alone. The more a person in such a situation, a person has to have a clerkite, that the Halachos of Bishul, something so meshunadik, in a matzav of tefillah, in a matzav of tahira, in a matzav of extreme simcha, something that's so unexpected, whether it's a dangerous makam or not a dangerous makam, it's something so unexpected. So a person has to see the Halachos of Bishul, the hand of the Bashefer, he has to try to be mechazik himself, to make the korban l'shma. Okay? Maisa has to be mechazik us, how much suffering Kivyachal HaKadosh Baruch Hu has from our pain. It's important to know that Hashem has suffering from our pain. So it says in the Gemara in Chagiga, I once heard a mashal. I'll say a person would be upset with the president. A lot of people are. So, be upset with the president. So, I'm going to get him. I'm going to write him a letter. Right? So you write this mamish long, angry letter to the president, and you tell your friend, today I wrote that Biden, I wrote him a sad brief, I told him what's on my mind, it isn't it? Right? I tell you, what did you write? You don't understand what I wrote. I wrote this and that. This guy's a little bit interesting, right? What exactly do you think is going to happen to this letter? Oh, no. You're going to see it's going to mamish put in its place, right? If you understand it. But you're going to, it's going to mamish this, right? Okay, that's because who are you? Mistama, where's this letter going to wind up? Put all the other angry letters to the president, right? If we'll even get that far, But let's say like the mayor of New York decides to write that letter. But let's say the mayor of somewhere else decides to write that letter, that he's angry with the president. So then there's more of a chance. Right? They'll get there. Now let's say it's like a governor of a state. Then already. Now let's say it's Putin or somebody of that. Now he writes an angry letter to the president. That could start a whole war. That could start a constant world war. Right? The person has to realize that we have the ability to give the Rebbeinu Shalom simcha. We have the ability to give the Rebbeinu Shalom agmas nefesh. The Rebbeinu Shalom suffers with our pain. And it has to give the person chizik to understand the milas of his actions and the importance of his actions. Moshe understood that. Gives so much simcha in his mitzvahs, in his ahavas haTorah. I had so many people that he was going with this murdik kiddush Hashem. It was a murdik kiddush Hashem on Friday. How many people had chizik? How painful Friday was, but how much chizik there was. Tisha B'av is the yontif. How's it hard to understand? Tisha B'av is a lot of questions, eicha this and eicha that, and the answer to all the questions is just emunah. There's no real answers that come out of Tisha B'av except pashut emunah. If you have emunah, you'll be okay. But Tisha B'av is the yontif nochals. Tisha B'av is the yontif because that's the day that the person makes the most introspection and he realizes that there's nothing else except kirbetz of the kimli toiv. What was the reality on Friday, at least of myself, and I think anybody involved? Nothing else is important except for Klal Yisrael and the Halachos of Bishul. There's nothing else except for Ben Adam Lamakim and Ben Adam L'Chavera. That was what came out. It was a very, very sad day, very painful day, but it's a very, very miyuchad day. Like Tisha B'av was a very miyuchad day. It was a day of tremendous introspection. That a person came to the reality of what is important in life, and nothing else is. Mardika Kiddush Hashem. Hey, we can't take the wrong message. When Titus Harosha, when he stabbed the paroiches, what did Titus think? He said, Kivyachal, he saw blood that came out of the paroiches. And with that, he said, you killed the Kivyachal. And with that, he went and he did all the terrible crimes that he did. He took the wrong message. It was a different person. Then he shot an arrow here and he shot an arrow there. He saw a message and he realized that the Rebbeinu Shalom is telling him, you better do tshuva. And he went to do tshuva. We can't take the wrong message from these things. We can't take these situations and look at the maybe we shouldn't be going to Meron and the Pikuach Nefesh, which is all true. Nothing to do with us now. Nothing to do with the message. Nothing to do with us. We have to be mechazik ourselves. So Tachlis, so when is Mashiach coming? No, nothing else, right? When's Mashiach coming? No, it's like the $1 million question. If it's the biggest tragedy in the history of modern day Israel or whatever, nothing else is the time that we live in and everything. So what, and it affected us. There was a list in the newspaper today of all the tragedies that didn't come as close to that one. There was one that was with 42 mentioned, one with 22 mentioned. And then the other ones you saw, it wasn't one that affected us as much. Maybe if we were bigger people, maybe Gdolei Yisrael did affect us much, but us, it didn't affect us. There wasn't a representative from the English and from the Chutznikim and from the Hasidim and from the Svardim and from the literature, the Ashkenazim and from into the mention. And this one had the representatives. So Nochals, when's Mashiach coming? When's he coming? There was a 6-year-old girl, it was Adis, and when she was in the gas chamber, she turned to her mother and she said to her, "No, is Mashiach still coming?" And the mother said to her, "Now, Fexter, now, more than ever. Now, has to the kasha. Until now, maybe you can have the kasha. When's Mashiach coming? But now, what was the answer that she gave her daughter? When does I say feel rachamim in the belt? Where there's so much rachamim, there's so much rachmanis in the belt. Whatever pain you have, he has much more. Now, what did Rav Schwab Zechron Lebracha say? He said on a regular day, has to be like there's good chances that Mashiach are going to come. There's a good chance. That's how a person has to. Unfortunately, we look at it as like there's a little chance it's going to come on a regular. So, but that's on a regular day. But then there are yomim amasugalim for the Mashiach to come. He said, like Nisan and the days of Geula, or the certain days that Klal Yisrael have a certain Kabbalah, it was Mizgalotas from Chazal, but those are days that are more Mesugal. On those days, it's good chance, 50-50. 50-50, Rav Schwab said, 50-50. Today, it's probably 51-49. If there would be enough Yiddish suffering, there's enough Yiddish suffering, but if there's enough chizik from that Yiddish suffering, and there's Azayfil Rachmanis in the belt. So then, now has to the kasha. Now's the kasha, when's Mashiach coming? Now more than ever, Mashiach is going to come. We have to chaperayim. We have to be mechazik ourselves. Hey. Hard when you're in the situation and you're only able to see what's in front of your face. When we say Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, we have to cover our eyes. Why do we cover our eyes when we say Shema Yisrael? Because when a person, his eyes are open, he's only able to see what's in front of him. What's in front of him is what he sees. Right? But when a person closes his eyes, he puts his hand over his eye, he's able to see forever. It's a whole different experience. When a person is able to look, there's a bigger picture over here. Right? There's no two HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's no good God. There's no bad God. What did the Imrayim say? Imrayim told people after the war, he gave them chizik. He told them there's 2 places in the Torah it says Leinechem. It says by Yosef, by Shimon. He took Shimon and he incarcerated him, Leinechem. He took Shimon and he put him in jail, Leinechem. And he took the Luchas. It says by Moshe Rabbeinu, it says the Eshperei, Maluchas Eshperei Le'einechem, in front of their eyes. So the man, what does it mean that he broke the Luchas in front of their eyes? What does it mean he incarcerated Shimon in front of their eyes? It means just like Shimon wasn't really incarcerated. He was treated very well in this Mitzri jail. It was all in front of their eyes. It was only Leinechem. It wasn't really being taken prisoner and whatever. It only looked like that. And when the Luchas were broken, Tzibrechem and Luchas was only in front of their eyes. It wasn't really like that. It was only Leinechem. What you're seeing is Moshe is only Leinechem. What you're seeing these korbanos in Klal Yisrael, only Leinechem. It's only something that it looks like it's when you have the eyes and the eyes are open. That's what it looks like. When your eyes are closed, you're able to see there's a much greater picture. But what should I tell you? The days of crying has ta'elis. In the Medrash, it talks about how when HaKadosh Baruch Hu was taking Klal Yisrael into Kallus, so he went, famous Medrash, the Kinder talks about it, Kinder Chav Zayin, it brings down that the Medrash says that Avraham Avinu and Moshe Rabbeinu and all the Avos HaKadoshim, they all got involved to talk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to try to tell the Rebbeinu Shleilam, Ashir Klali, why the Klal Yisrael shouldn't go into Kallus. Made nigus and Cheshbainis, why should Klal Yisrael go? I made this and this. HaKadosh Baruch Hu answered them. Right? There was one group that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wasn't able to answer. That was the Imayas. It's Rachel Imenu, Mama Rachel and Leah. They just cried. And cried. And when there's enough rachamim and there's enough pain, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said there'll be an end to the Kallus. When there's enough trerin and there's enough pain, so there'll be an end to the tzara. And then Mashiach will come. Oh. The Rabbi Tzaddik in Vesisei Laila writes, what does it mean that we say that Vasid Lava, there'll be a shofar gadol, you talk about shofar gadol, and that there'll be this great shofar, this blow of the shofar. What's this great blow of the shofar? He said that shofar is made up of all the cries of all of the doiros, whether it was the cries from the crusade, from the Churban, from Tachmatat, from Auschwitz, from last night, from Friday, from this Tkufa, there's going to come a point where there's enough Treren, and then that creates the Tkiya of the Shofar HaGadol. Now you know that whatever you cry will last forever. Now you know it'll last forever. Wherever you cry, it lasts forever and ever. There has to be a point of Bechi. There has to be a place where a person's able to be Beicha. But he has to be Mechazik ourselves, not to wallow, to realize that there's Ta'elis. There's Ta'elis because as Zayful Rachamim, that we could be Ma'oirer, and then when we actually are Mechazik ourselves, so that has tremendous Ta'elis in the Zman of Rachamim. That's Lamaisa, the thoughts that I had. What should I tell you, Rabbi Isai? Hey, if you're not going to be Mechazik now, you'll never be Mechazik. The Koilo is meyusid on Simcha. This Koilo, there's no suffix why, in the greater scheme, the greater spectrum, Akash Baruch Hu took a korban from every different facet of Yiddishkeit. There's a facet of the, like I said, the Sfardim and the Ashkenazim and the Litvish and the Chassidim and the Balcher and the Yingala, Das, Bnei Chutzlarts. Akash Baruch Hu took a korban from the Koilo. He took from the Koilo. The Koilo it's a group in Klal Yisrael. It's a group in Klal Yisrael. There's Chassidim, there's Sfardim. There's a second Seder Koilo. Both we have in here. We have the Sfardim, we have the Chassidim, we have the Ashkenazim. We have from all the different countries. From all the different countries, and it's also an Eidah in Klal Yisrael. It's also a group in Klal Yisrael. Second Seder Koilo. What's the group of the second Seder Koilo in Klal Yisrael? It's the group of an incredible Simchas HaTorah with an Achdus and a Hava Zelazeh. Was there a kasha that we had the Shens the Korban, the Korban Mechuder, Unkein Mum, and of the Korban that we sent, the Korban which was of the Sefer Panim Yofis, of a Havas HaTorah. He was the Spitz that we could send. He was the Spitz Korban. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when he chooses the Korban, he chooses the finest of the fine. So he took from the Koilo. But the Koilo is meyusid on Simcha. The Koilo is meyusid on Simcha. This place does not work without Simcha. It won't work. It won't work. You can't give the Shiur without Simcha. It won't work, right? It won't work. What would happen if we came in tomorrow and I gave the Shiur, just a little bit dead, with the reveal lebechi, and it won't work. It won't work. It have to be b'simcha. Our dogma was Moshe. He was the dogma of Simchas HaTorah. He was the poster boy, I think it's called, right? The poster boy of the Koilo. He was the poster boy of the Koilo. Somebody that was Sefer Panim Yofis, Ahavas HaTorah. The Koilo won't work without Simcha. We'll have to close down. We'll have to close and we'll have to open again. We're not going to close, we'll just open again. We have to be able to be mechazik ourselves, to learn b'simcha. Learn b'simcha. Ki nefalti, it says in the Kinna Lamed Hey, ki nefalti, kamti Hashem azarani. Ki nefalti, because we fall, ki nefalti, kamti. That's where the Koilo is going to knock. We're going to knock. Why? Because we had such a moiridik in the fila, such a moiridik aveda, such an appreciation. If it took this for me to realize what is the relationship of a Talmud to a Rebbe, what does a Talmud mean to myself? If it took us to realize what it is, the underlying side of our Hatzlacha and Limud HaTorah is when we learn the Simcha, and we learn with that Ahava, and we learn with that moiridik Achdus. It's in my emes, after the war, or the war actually, it wasn't really after the war, it was really during the war still, he met Belzer Rebbe. And he told the Belzer Rebbe like this: the Belzer Rebbe lost the world, lost the ganze Welt. They all lost the world, but the Belzer Rebbe lost everything. And, lost even more than the Ger Rebbe, lost the world. The Ger lost the whole Chassidus. The Belzer Rebbe lost everything. So when he saw the Belzer Rebbe, he told him, he asked him a kasha. He asked him that it's state in Torah state that Yosef meets Binyamin, and Yosef was boicha al tzavar. He boicha on his tzavar, on his shoulder, and he was boicha on his tzavar. They were crying on each other's shoulders. So the Miriam the kasha that he was crying. It says in Rashi for the churban that will be in the Shevet Binyamin. The Binyamin had the Beis Hamikdash. By Yosef, I think it's Mishkan Shiloh. They each cried on the other one's Churban. He cried on his Churban that he's not going to have the Mishkan is going to be destroyed by him, and he cried on his portion that the Beis Hamikdash is going to be destroyed. They cried for each other's Churbanos. In fact, the Ger Rebbe, the Kasha. So when he's crying for a Churban, why aren't they crying for their own Churban? You should cry for, I'm going to lose the Beis Hamikdash, and he should cry because I'm going to lose the Mishkan. Suffice the Chois Belzer Rebbe. It's like the Ger Rebbe. Suffice the Chois Belzer Rebbe. Of a Hagen Churban, for your own Churban, you can't cry. For your own Churban, you can't cry. For somebody else's Churban, you have to be Meritrerin. For somebody else's pain, you have to have pain. You have to cry. But Belzer Rebbe, for your own, right? Go build the world. Right? If your own Churban, you can't cry. On your own Churban, you have to be mechazik yourself, and you have to build the world. A person that has this pain has to cry. He has to cry for his wife. Has to cry. It's painful. It's painful. He has to cry for family. Right? He has to cry for the friends. Yes, sir. But for his own, he has to be mechazik himself, and he has to go weiter. Each person that has his own sorrow in this, he has a pain in this, can't cry in your own pain. In the beginning, you have to cry. But then afterward, right? Go be a Welt. No time to cry. Belzer Rebbe, go build the world. What do you do? Listen to the amendments. After that's just the massive, which I tell you, everybody say. There's 24,000 Talmidim. 24,000 Talmidim. I have no hasaga. I don't. It's still not that's not a musig that I can even medame or understand. What it is to lose one Talmud, I now understand. What it is to lose 24,000. What it is to lose two, I should never know. It's not something which would clap in the cup of chalal, but I understand that he's the, connected that 24,000. He's the 24,000 of this kailah, which means that we are the 5 Talmidim that are going to continue the Messiah in Klal Yisrael. After the 24,000 were nifter and the oilam was shaman. So what did Rabbi Kiva do? Rabbi Kiva went weiter. It doesn't say anywhere, in any place, anywhere in Shas, Shas and Paiskim, that Rabbi Kiva, after the 24,000 were nifter, he learned with a little bit of pain. It doesn't say it anywhere because it's not emes. It doesn't say anywhere that after Rabbi Kiva lost all 24,000 Talmidim, it was epis mashu different. It says pum fakir, pum. You can't make a Reb Meir without learning the simcha. You can't make a Reb Shimon Bar Yochai without learning with the gishmak. You can't make a Reb Yehuda Bar Ilai without having the same level, if not more, of what is Torah by you and the Havas Torah and the Gishmak and the Pilpul Chaverim. You can't make a Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi was Nibuka Yimai with Svara if you're going to be at Tzebrech and a mensch. They never saw it on Rabbi Kiva. They never saw it in the base Medrash. They went weiter. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Elazar ben Shammaya, they went weiter. Those 5 Talmidim were Maimed Torah in Klal Yisrael. That means that the Moshe, the 24,000, the Talmud of Rabbi Kiva, that's the Talmud of Rabbi Kiva. That's what has to be mechazik us. Mistama, the schus of those 5 Tanoim to be Maimed Torah in the world came from the 24,000, came from the oilam being shaman. Kina falti kamti, because they saw that there has to be the achrayus, the responsibility, the seriousness of life, the appreciation of what we have, the appreciation to learn together, b'chabura, to learn b'yachad, to understand that when we're mechazik ourselves, that gives nachas ruach to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When's Mashiach coming? It's not far away. It's not far away. Mistama, she's going to see her husband soon. It's not far away. It's not far away. Just see the message. If you don't mechazik now, never be mechazik. You'll never be mechazik yourself. If this isn't going to get you to change, you'll never be mechazik. It's no shayla. It's no shayla. I don't see any reason why you have to wallow in pain. Go weiter. Go weiter. Stronger in tefillah. Stronger in safe upon him yafis. The person takes that save upon him yafis. Smiles at a chavrusa. Smiles at his rabbi. He smiles at people. Right? Always smiling. Wasn't he always smiling? Always smiling. Right? Always smiling. Right? And the tefillah. I mean, what should I tell you? If the Baruch Shemoy is what got mentioned over and over again, so then maybe we're mechazik in the Baruch Shemoy. Right? Right away, we're making the tender a few minutes earlier because he always asked, right? He always maybe we should make it a few minutes earlier. He would run into the mincha. Who remembers? No, you were always here, right? He would run into the mincha. I'd say, Moshe, belch. No, it's okay, I didn't miss it. No, you don't miss it. Right? We're waiting for him. Right? Save upon the office. Chazik in tefillah, in a havas atayra, in simcha of Torah. Whoever doesn't have yet the simcha of Torah in this room, he's missing the point of being here. This room is miyusid on one thing, simcha of Torah. When you have simcha of Torah, so then, all of a sudden, you're not so much a batlin anymore because your whole dibur is Torah. You're not so much, you have much more of a cheshik, you have much more of a zitzfleish. It's a different experience. Havas HaTorah, simcha for the mitzvah, chein al panav, save upon him yafis. We have to be mechazik ourselves in that. But the most, we have to be mechazik ourselves as a chabura, right? To be strong and to go weiter. After the 24,000 Talmidim were nifter, the chabura went weiter and was stronger than ever before. Right? On whose chus was that? On the 24,000 Talmidim. Because the olam was mechazik yourselves. If you mechazik yourselves, the korban will be the shema. If you won't be mechazik yourself, you'll never be mechazik yourself, and the korban will be shaloi l'shma. You have to be mechazik. Each person, k'fi mashu, each person has to be mechazik himself. If they took a korban from our kailo, it means there's something very miyuchad about this kailo. The kailo is a group in Kallus. It's one of the groups. Right? As I can say, the kailo. It's one of the groups. It's chassidim, there's a spider, we have a lot of the, chavrai over here. Right? Mechazik ourselves. You have to learn the simcha. And halavai, that will be an ilui nishmasa. That's the greatest ilui nishmasa. The greatest ilui nishmasa is we'll be mechazik ourselves to learn Torah, gishmak with simcha. Maisa last night, late, they said they went into Reb Chaim. I didn't get until it wasn't the guy to say at the Levaya, but they asked Reb Chaim what to say. I asked somebody to go in what to say by the. He said that the Olam has to be mechazik in Torah. Nach alt, it all comes down to Torah. Right? By us, the definition of that, the explanation, he knows, he was talking to those that learn Torah, that are the Bnei Torah. But by us, the definition, the way that expresses itself is in the simcha of Torah, the havas of Torah, the gishmak. This place only works with simcha of Torah. It won't work. If I have to come in tomorrow and be said, it won't work. I'll have to close down. So we have to go small. That's Hashem. Again, weiter. Now, it's not again to give a shit on by now. Hashem. Tell them go learn tomorrow, business as usual, right? That doesn't mean that he will be forgotten. It's poof fakir, right? Right, Rabbi Bergman? What would I be saying with it, right, Rabbi Bergman? Poof fakir. Poof fakir. It means that he's not forgotten. If we're mechazik ourselves, and the koilo, ki nafalti kamti, the koilo is going to be even stronger, more gishmak. It's going to be more gishmak. So then there's going to be a great tayalas. Halvai, this will be the last tsar in the Kailo. Halvai will be Zeichel Zantaka. His wife will see him soon. We'll see him soon. It'll be Bez Hashem. Binyan Beis Hamikdash. Tzich Tzikeinu B'meir B'yameinu. Amen.